Fest people take notes.
Fest people take notes.
I want to know where to eat. I already know the lineup. Tell me where to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me where
there should be. Boise.
Boise. Boise. Boise.
I'm just shooting the shit. So
yes, love that.
Whatever you want to talk about, I'm open.
Hell yeah. Okay. Well, without further ado, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. Before we get going, I realized I don't have my laptop plugged in, so we should be good now. I'm super stoked.
Mine's not, but I'm at 100%, so I think we're good. Hopefully, if I have to get down in front of here to plug it in, I'm sorry, but
there have been a couple episodes where phones or laptops have died, and then I've had to do a little tail end interview at the very end once it boots back up. But yeah, without further ado, today we're going to be joined by the lovely Charlie of Ingrown, Rejection Pact, a lot of Boise staples, and yeah, this has been something that's been long time talks in the making. So I'm really excited to be finally doing it.
Yeah, me too. I always see all my friends talk to you, and I'm like, man, I want to do that shit. Wait, can I curse? Is that fine? Am I allowed to curse? Of course.
No, this is not going on the Disney Channel or anything like that.
Well, I figured. I don't know. You gotta ask. Sometimes people are like, don't do that.
Yeah, oh, now I have to go and bleep out everything. But no, it's
yeah,
it's rated M for mature, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I can't speak without cursing or whatever Ricky says in court. That's me. I can't do it. So.
Yeah, but yeah, Charlie and I have connected a lot online in the last number of years. But as I was prepping for this podcast, I was going back. We've got a number of sets from Rejection Pact, a couple from Ingrown as well. And I think in all of those years of documenting and crossing paths, we might not have had an initial or intentional, conversation or back and forth. I think the last time Rejection Pact was in Calgary, I was actually all the way in Toronto filming another fest. So Jordan and Cole were doing that show. So, it's
that's right.
I feel like there's such a solid friendship between the two of us, but the actual FaceTime has been very limited. So it's always funny how that happens.
Through hardcore, it's especially it's you'll have so many conversations with people just online, and then when you meet each other talking face to face, it's you just pick up where you leave off, and it doesn't really feel weird, which is cool. But yeah, I think that's exactly I remember in Calgary it being two other people that were not you, but I think did you film the Vancouver set that I don't know if that was that you that filmed the Vancouver set?
That might have been Matt that did that. Yeah, that was the Your Problem release show.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. I think it's just been. I think the first and maybe only time that we were actually physically close to one another was when Ingrown was playing the 5-year for DPK, and we were this far away from one another, but again, it's through the vein of hardcore where you can build up such close friendships, but then 2-3 years later you actually meet them at a fest or a show or whatever. Yeah, and I think that's part of that's kind of the coolest thing about it at this point, especially because obviously, I'm sure back in the day when there was no internet to talk to everybody on, I'm sure everyone still became friends one way or another, but it is kind of cool, just being oh man, we've talked a million times. What's up, IRL? Yeah, cool. Exactly. But Charlie, as you know, you were mentioning at the top of the episode, you've seen a lot of your other friends on here, and you've wanted to do that. A part of the show before we get into any music talks is checking some bevs, which you have been swagging a couple times already. So tell me what you're going to be repping for your episode today.
All right, so I got a Zevia creamy root beer, new flavor. It's probably the best one that I've had.
Okay.
It's very awesome. It kind of tastes like almost like a diet, like A&W almost is probably the best way to put it.
Interesting.
Definitely
Okay.
the best flavor. I've only found it one place and I went back to buy more and they were gone. So, and then when that one's down, I got a Mountain Dew Baja Blast Zero.
Gotcha.
Because I drink like a million pops a day because I'm a maniac. So I was already like prepared. I was like, I got two ready, so I don't have to get up. Well, so what about you? What do you got here today?
So again, like a blistering hot day here in Calgary. I think it's like 31 degrees Celsius, which is like I think around 90 in the States. So I'm going to be doing something iced to kind of battle that. So our Bev sponsor Say When, I actually got our like bi-monthly subscription from them. So I was like, yeah, it feels appropriate to check that. So like this is their dirty chai mix. So, you know, as you can see, like there's a little bit of residue, which shows like I use this on the frequent. You know, I did a episode yesterday where I checked this, and all it is like a 1-to-1 mix of the mix and some oat milk, and we're off to the races. So,
man, big oat milk fan over here.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get it. I can't get enough.
Okay, so you know, this is, you know, we are not sponsored by Earth's Own, but this is my personal favorite oat milk. But I'm kind of curious on what your personal favorite is.
So I don't think we have that here. That might be.
This is a Canadian only brand. Yeah.
So we usually either get, so whenever I do buy oat milk, it's usually just Oatly or Planet Oat is another one.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. Normally, because I've been doing this like dumb diet thing, and I've been buying like almond or flax milk because it's like lower calorie. But every morning, I've been on like a huge iced coffee kick lately. First, like I just never was a big coffee person, and now I'm like, oh, I have to have like an iced coffee every day. So it's like I get oat milk in it every time. I'm like, gosh, this is so many calories, but it's kind of, I just don't think about it, you know,
right.
It's the best one. But
yeah,
usually Oatly. We have a place here called Grocery Outlet, which is like, it's kind of weird. So it's like they basically have all this stuff that like, it's weird. A lot of the stuff I don't see at any other store, but it's almost like they'll have stuff where it's like, oh, well, the store had too much of this, so we're just gonna send it to Grocery Outlet. So they'll have like they have a whole freezer section full of like Gardein vegan stuff that like they don't sell other places, but you'll find it at Grocery Outlet. And then they also just have like pallets of oat milk that are like really cheap. So I almost always just buy whatever Oatly like because it's always like the barista one for some reason. So I'll buy that one a lot. But yeah, if we go to just normal grocery shopping, not to Grocery Outlet, it's just Planet Oat.
Yeah,
like.
I know the Oatly specifically is like if you're doing a hot anything, like if you're trying to froth that barista is by far the best. I feel like any of the things that you get at any normal grocery store is just like it's a step above those. So yeah, the Oatly is a good call. But yeah, like I have all these talks with different people about like oat milk versus almond milk and which application is better. But I think overall, you know, if you know, gun to your head, I think oat milk in general is like kind of,
I think it's like
one
across
size
the
fits all.
board.
Yeah,
like it's, you know, exactly. Like I feel like even with cooking, like I feel like if I'm ever cooking anything, like anytime I make like vegan mac and cheese or anything that requires like a milk base, I'll almost use cashew milk because I feel like it's like pretty neutral tasting without being like kind of, I feel like almond milk's kind of watery, if that makes sense. So like,
and very heavy, I find.
Right. And so cashew milk is usually a go-to for cooking and stuff, but also oat milk is just like the best tasting one. I don't know. They have this stuff. I don't know if you guys have it up there, but it's called not milk. And it's like so weird. I mean, I haven't had actual milk in like 3 years or so, but it's really strange. Like
is that like AI milk is what they're kind of branded as?
I think so. So it's almost really weird. There's like this weird overtone of like, I like know this sounds ridiculous, but like cotton candy, like I don't think it's meant to be like sweet. I just think like whatever they make it with has some like weird sweetness to it. That's like, again, it's very like artificial cotton candy. I guess cotton candy is just sugar, but Well, like in a cereal or whatever, the not milk is really good in cooking with it. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. They only have it at Whole Foods, and it's like kind of expensive. So I don't know. I kind of don't really go out of my way to get.
Yeah,
it. It's pretty good.
I think if I'm remembering correctly, when Matthew from Mind Eyes came on, he's he's big on the vegan products and things like that, and I think he brought that to check on his episode. Someone can fact check me on that. I definitely want to get into some music chats before we just like, what's on Charlie's grocery list? Chat.
Oh yeah, no, I could talk about food probably longer than talk about music. Like, that's like I think if it, the only reason to go on tour really is to be able to eat food at other cities. So.
True. It's not fuck playing music. It's just about eating and like treating yourself.
Right. No, it's like, it's like what has, because, again, I live in Boise and like there's not vegan food here, but it's pretty like
slim pickings.
Like, the thing is like, okay, the spots that we do have that are really good in vegan aren't vegan specific. Like we have like an Ethiopian restaurant here that is awesome, but it's not like a vegan specific restaurant, right? Sure. Like there's like a food truck here that's pretty good, and like a couple other places that have like vegan stuff. There's not like, I think there's one all vegan restaurant in town, and it's good, but it's not like vegan bullshit. It's just, like kind of like almost like healthier ish.
Sure. Okay.
So again, every time we go on tour, I'm like, I need to eat the food, and I like budget way more food money than I should, so I can just eat like stupid shit the whole time.
Yeah,
because that's again the best part about going on tour.
Yeah,
to me, eating. I mean, playing shows is great too, and hanging out, but like eating the food is like that's the whole thing.
Oh yeah, and especially like with certain places that have like that specialize in different things, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or anything in between. But I do think that there is, that is a thing where, if you're on tour, you want to ask the locals, like, yo, like, I don't want to just like go on Yelp or like Google what's the best vegan spot and wherever. Like, I want to know the actual best picks.
Well, and I follow like so many food pages and stuff, and like just I'm all again like that's just like my whole other thing other than playing music is just like playing video games and eating stupid food. That's literally my entire existence. So like, yeah, it's pretty much just like look up the stupidest thing and go eat crazy nonsense. So
right.
I don't know. I like the food. So.
Yeah.
Like I'll talk all day about food if you love it.
Yeah. Maybe one of the last questions before we just hard transition into the rest of the episode is, what is the best vegan spot that you've hit while on tour with any of the bands?
Oh man. Okay, I might have like a few, and I won't go into too much detail. I won't make it too long, but it's Vegan Dale in Toronto. Like it's like a brewery. I got this like weird pulled pork fries thing that's like insanity, and it had like fries and like pulled pork and pickles. It was so bizarre, and it was like these like almost like sweet fries, but that was awesome. That was in Toronto. Another random spot was there's this like place called Sham in Montreal that was amazing, and it was just like rice and like some sort of like vegan chicken. And so I don't know why it was so good though that when I went back to Montreal, it was like the only place I cared about going, which is silly. So there is awesome. This is probably kind of one that is like maybe kind of a random one, but like there's this place in Salt Lake called The Pie that has like vegan chicken bacon ranch pizza, which is like I just make it a point to get it like every time.
Sure.
So that, and then there's probably a bunch that I'm missing, but I'd also say I got two more. So the vegan creamy ramen from Jinya in Vancouver. I know that's not like a Vancouver specific place.
Yeah, we got a Jinya here, but I can attest the vegan ramen there is.
I didn't even care about like ramen period until I had that. I was like, this is. And then Gracias Madre in in San Francisco is very good, and it's I would love to go back there.
Yeah, and
it's very very spendy, but it's good.
Yeah, and I think like to connect it back into the music, I think it is that thing where bands we'll go and tour places that maybe they won't have the, it's not the craziest show that they might experience, but they're like, no, we are going to go to this place that has these insane vegan donuts, or we're going to go to this, crazy brewery in town, and everyone in the band's like a craft beer head or whatever it is. So yeah, that's a, something that is probably not as talked about as it maybe is. So.
Well, and it's funny because it's like, to loop this all into touring and stuff. It's like, I used to like really not like, because it's like I never really thought about this for a long time. But so it's like when you go on tour, you're in a place for like, unless it's like a short drive, you're really only there for like half a day, right?
All right.
Most of the time, like you don't really get to like experience a place, right? Like, you're like, we have a couple hours, let's go do it, like eat a thing or like check out a thing, and then it's like you load in, you play, and then you go sleep, and then you just leave the next day, right? So it's like
it's very like speed dating-esque with the city, right? Yeah.
Well, so I think for like a long time, I just had all these impressions of these places that I had been to, but I was like, I didn't really care about that. I didn't really like it or what, because I was just being, I don't know, just shitty, I guess. And I just had this like, I don't know, like maybe like where I just was getting like such a tiny, like nothing experience of a place. Because again, it's like, you're just playing a show, right? Like it's cool and it's different, but it all blends together when you're just doing the same thing. And it wasn't honestly until like, because I didn't even realize this. So like I went on tour, and then after the tour went to Vancouver when my wife still lived there, and I stayed there for like 2 weeks. And it was honestly probably the first time I'd ever like spent an extended period of time somewhere other than like Boise as an adult that wasn't to play music and stuff and like get to like exist in a place kind of and like just do normal stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And it really like, and I'd been to Vancouver multiple times before that, and I never like didn't like it. I just never really like saw all the cool stuff. So to me, again, it just felt like another place a little bit. And it made me like really put into perspective that I'm like, I just need to like again, that's part of the whole thing with touring. It's like, it's not just going and playing the show. It's like, even if again, it is just simple as like, we're going to go eat at this, but just experiencing like stuff that has to do with the city is like something I've like really tried to like be more conscious of doing, if that makes sense. So that like, because I think it'd be really easy for people to come to Boise and be like, well, this is just like nothing, you know what I mean? And like really not kind of get it, and so, and me being somebody who like puts on for Boise pretty hard, like it's not really fair of me to treat other people's cities like that, right?
Sure.
So I've had to kind of like put that in perspective where I was like, I feel like I was like being kind of like a fucking Grinch about like anywhere we go. Well, this sucks. Like I don't even know why. Like I'm just like such a dick. So
right.
Like I said, it's like that's kind of the sickest thing about touring, and like again, eating the food or like going to the thing or like whatever, because it's just I don't know. It's like you get this opportunity to go to so many places in a short time that it's like it's hard to like take everything in, but like. I don't know, like if you can like really just be like, yo, like let's figure out some cool stuff to do while we're here and like play, like, just be on time so we can do stuff. Like, I don't know, you end up, I think, having more fun than just like, we're just in the van and then we get out and I'm at the place now. I have to carry all this stuff. And I'm just gonna,
and then the what's that movie? It's like the cycle repeats. It's like the same day multiple times over, just in different locations. And I think it's like, unless you're like consciously planning those things out, like I've always been a fan of like, being like, I remember for that Vancouver fest that you guys are playing, like shout out to Spencer from Worldview who wrote up like a master document on the event as far as like, this is where you can eat. If you're vegan, eat at these places. If you're a coffee head, go to these places. And I remember I checked out a couple off of that. And, otherwise I might have just been like, oh, I don't have time. And then I'm, getting McDonald's or, something that I could get at home just as easily or whatever. But
right. And that's, I mean, that is kind of the cool thing. I mean, so like, cause I don't really go to a lot of fests and stuff. It's not that I don't want to, but it's just like, it's like, it's hard. Cause it's like, I don't know. It's like, you're always like, oh, like, well, the pass is like what, $200, but then you're like, oh, I gotta like stay at a place, I gotta get there, and it just ends up being like a whole thing, and it's, it's not a thing that I always have time to do. But so I did go to Sound of Fury when Have Heart played and stuff, and like, it is kind of cool to like just get to go to a place for a few days and have it be in a because like with DPK it was awesome because it's like where the Biltmore is, there's like a lot of cool stuff within walking distance. So you're like, oh, like I want to take a break from watching bands for 5 seconds. I'm gonna like walk down to this place, and I don't know. I think I'm sure that fests do this, and I just don't see it. But like, I think that every fest should do that, where they're like, here's the cool stuff around here, and then you're not just like wandering around. Like,
Yeah, or you're taking a $25 Uber just to get to like something that you think is vegan, but you actually pass 3 even better vegan spots on the way there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely the smart, appreciated move. Fest people take notes.
Fest people take notes.
I want to know where to eat. I already know the lineup. Tell me where to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me where
there should be the same poster. Just one is all the bands, and then one is all the it's just like the logos of all the small businesses.
This stuff's cool right here. Honestly, though, at Sound of Fury, they had seen a vegan, which is also really good.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm letting this trail off into food again, but that was sick. I'll have the food there,
mm-hmm.
and then I don't have to go very far.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about food for almost 20 minutes or so we should
shut it down with the food. I'm sorry.
No, I love it, man. I love being able to. Those aren't things that I can plan for a podcast. They just naturally come up, and I would rather entertain that than try to shut it down. But we'll cap it at that point. But
that's the idea.
Charlie, as you know, like any new guest that I have on the show, I always like to get just a little bit of context about how they got into punk and hardcore and heavy music. So
Sure.
Let's ring back the clock. Take me back to like the first time you heard like guitar music or breakdowns or however that was kind of laid out for you.
Sure. Well, so like growing up, like 'cause I'm 28, and I had an older sister who's like we're like 9 years apart, and so growing up, she would always go to Warped Tour and stuff, and I don't know, would like listen again to that era of Warped Tour bands like Green Day and like I don't know, like Good Charlotte and like Sugar Cult and like a lot of like early pop punk bands and stuff. So and then of course like playing honestly skateboarding video games like Grind Session and Tony Hawk and like Matt Hop, like any of those games like always had cool soundtracks. So that's probably like the first time ever being exposed to like actual like punk or hardcore or like anything adjacent to that. Because like my dad growing up was into like classic rock and stuff like everyone else's dad probably is, like Pink Floyd and stuff, and we always had records at the house and stuff. But the first time hearing stuff like that, I think I was like I don't know, 7-ish again. And I remember like I had a Talkboy growing up, and we'd always make these like mixtapes on the Talkboy, like the Home Alone Talkboy, like of the song.
Okay.
Right. And so I'd always like really get into that kind of stuff like that. And then as far as like metal goes or like heavier stuff, like my sister's boyfriend, now husband, had Far Beyond Driven, the Pantera CD, and I didn't know which one it was. I just remember it just was like a bird CD that said Pantera, and I'd listen to it all the time. And then so it was like that and Linkin Park and I'd say basically Pantera and Linkin Park at the beginning were like the first like heavy bands I think I ever really had on my radar. And then being that age, it's like Korn and like I don't know, like just new metal's huge, right? So like as far as heavier music and stuff goes, it was 100% new metal, like no questions asked. And as far as like punk and stuff goes, like a lot of it again goes back to my sister going to Warped Tour. I think the first time I heard like real punk like consciously, I remember I had a Good Charlotte poster in my room that I'd gotten at like probably Walmart or something. Okay. And my brother, who's like quite a bit older, was like, he's like, that shit ain't punk. Check this out. And then he gave me Punkorama Volume 2.
Oh, okay.
Which is a great, like to this day, I still like listen to that one a lot because it's just, I don't know, it's just like nostalgic, that track order or whatever. So that's probably the first time like really getting into real punk. And where I grew up, it was like, there was like 800 people that lived in the whole town. Like Boise was like 2 hours away. And, at the time, like, Boise would get concerts rolling through and stuff like that. But I never really knew about like hardcore for like a long time. I think I saw Throwdown once when I was still very into like metal and stuff, and I didn't know they were a hardcore band. Everything's metal when you're that age, right?
Yeah.
So I remember going to see like Throwdown, and it was probably the first time I saw people like hardcore dancing and stuff. And like I was like, what is this is crazy. And like I don't know, like I basically went to like new metal concerts to begin with. Like I think it was like, you know, like Korn and like Static X and like all those bands. And I don't think it was until I was honestly like 15 or 16, because at this time, like we had one main venue in Boise that would have like lots of shows, but they'd all be metalcore. Like they basically stopped having hardcore shows like right before I started like coming around, because you know, like they would just be like rowdier than the metalcore shows, or there'd be problems or whatever. So there was always hardcore shows happening, you know, like again, like Devin from Reject, like, you know, he's a little older than me, so that they would book and like house shows and stuff, but that was never on my radar. So I think the first actual like hardcore show I ever went to that wasn't Throwdown was I saw Gravemaker in a basement, and I remember being like freaked out because I'd never been to like a house show. Like we had played like shows in like our friends' garages and stuff, but never been to like a packed like basement where people are like, you know, like hardcore dancing and stuff. And I just remember like being like, this is so much crazier than like any of the other shows we go to, because even though like, you know, we'd go see again like big metal shows or like, you know, like metalcore bands and stuff, and it would be awesome. Like I was like, man, like I'm just seeing this cool band and it's like in someone's basement and like people are punching each other in the head and shit. And it was, you know, so that was like the first like, okay, like big fan of this. And, you know, again too, it's like there was never that like like for a long time I didn't know there was like everything was either hardcore or metal, right? Like again, there's that age where you're like everything's just heavy music, so I like it. So it's like again, I think like it went punk, new metal, metalcore, and then hardcore. For me, which again, I feel like that's a pretty natural segue for a lot of people. But
yeah, totally. Yeah, we're of the same age in that. You know, obviously no one has like a copy paste experience when it comes to discovering that. So, but it was very similar to me, like playing those Tony Hawk games, listening to that like punk stuff, you know, getting into things like pop punk and just having that like, okay, this is still like radio-ish music, but it's got an edge to it. And then like, you know, growing up in the time where like New Level was like at the forefront with, you know, bands like Disturbed and bands like Slipknot and Limp Bizkit and all of those, and really getting like pumped by like radio and, you know, MTV and all that. And then like metalcore having that like kind of, you know, variety pack almost with like the, you know, the disembodied metalcore, but also like the stuff that you would hear on MySpace and like all the Risecore stuff. So like, yeah, there's a ton of, I think for people in our age bracket, like that seems like a very natural way of like finding your way into like, you know, finding the punk, you know, because the punk and hardcore at like kind of the tail ends, but like you kind of getting through the new metal and metalcore, it's like you have that appreciation for like the heavier hardcore versus without that being an actual subgenre per se.
Because you know, like it's like if you, because like okay, like so I think the first time I like realized that there was like maybe a difference between like, because again, you know, new metal has always been like the term for like a lot of that music, but like again, you don't really, when you're young, you're not like I'm into new metal. Like that's not really I think what people said. I think that's just the era is coined as that, right? So like I think the first time, because I remember like during a Christmas break, like I had this I bought this like Headbangers Ball CD and it had like all these bands on it, and I remember going into a CD store and getting a Shadows Fall CD, and I didn't know, I was like, this looks cool, and I bought, so it was War Within and then Converge You Fail Me, and I only knew who Converge was because like again Limewire, you know, like that was like you just like type in a band and like you, side note really quick, so I growing up never really liked Bring Me the Horizon, but on Limewire I just remember I would look up any band, like you'd see like a breakdown video or like whatever, and you just go and you'd like type in the bands that you saw on YouTube. So I remember downloading Bring Me the Horizon because I heard like a breakdown on a video, and then the song that I downloaded didn't sound anything like it, and but I just thought it was Bring Me the Horizon forever.
Like, and I only had
classic. Right. Like I just had this one song on like these
The Trojan horse, as far as like it's something else, but it's there's something else packed inside. Yeah, for sure.
And so for like so long, I thought this band was Bring Me the Horizon, and I remember seeing Bring Me the Horizon and just it being a completely different thing. Right. And then like later on, I think the band was this like post-hardcore band called like Glory of This, which is like not even who I don't even know. I haven't even thought about it in a long time. But again, it's like. So back to it. So okay, sorry, I'm all over the place.
No,
so with metal. So I had a Shadows Fall CD, and I was like, this is sick. So they came to Boise, and I think I was maybe like 14, and the show was Shadows Fall, Chimera, Amon Amarth, and then Darkest Hour. Wow. And I was like, and I didn't know any of the bands except for Amon Amarth and Shadows Fall.
Yeah.
But then I remember showing up, and then there was like Acacia Strains, like whatever the scrim, like the thing that goes in front of the amps, like whatever those are. And I like didn't know who it was. And I just remember some kid being like, oh shit, like the Acacia Strains playing this show. And like all these dudes are going to well, they'll see the basketball jersey guys over there. They're going to like fucking beat everybody up or whatever. And so that was probably the first like real like breakdown, like crazy, like, cause I mean, I'd seen, As I Lay Dying and like metal bands, but that was probably the first, like, again, like going into that just like heavy breakdown type of stuff ever. And I just remember being like, this is so scary. Like people just, again, it just blew my mind. And so, but because of that show, I remember meeting kids there that were like, you come to like shows often? And I was like, yeah, I come here all the time. It was like, at the time it was just called the Big Easy. It's like the Knitting Factory now. And they're going, we go to the venue all the time, like down the street. And like, we just saw like Kill Whitney Dead there the other night and stuff. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So I remember looking up the venue, and there was all these bands that I'd be downloading on Limewire, but I'd never and they'd just been playing in Boise. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I remember like the first time I went there, I think I saw Dillinger Escape Plan, and it was so sick. And it was like them and the Bled and Heavy Lolo. And that was like, again, probably the first like non like metal show that I went to at like an actual like place. Cause at the time, like, that was like the thing. Right. And also too, is like what I was going to lead in with the Shadows Fall thing. There was a period of time where I felt like metalcore was like metalcore is obviously big now, right? Like if you go see like a big metal band, there's a chance that you're going to see like a rise core band on the show or whatever. But back in the day, I feel like there was a period of time where it's like you would go see a big metal tour, and then like Every Time I Die would be on the tour or like whatever. Like I feel like you got exposed that way. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's so fun. Again, seeing the Acacia Strain play those songs for the first time, it's such a weird like one, but that was, again, first time where I was like, damn, like this is like a different thing than like just like the metal these other bands are playing. Like first like breakdown band I think I ever like consciously was like aware of, but
right.
I don't know. Yeah.
I just love that visual that you're like downloading stuff and like you just see a big name, but like some small band was like, what if we put out this music and then like put a totally different like huge band name on it, and then it's like, surprise, motherfucker, like that's crazy. I
honestly think that's had to have been what happened, because at the time, I mean, I'm sure that was like they were probably very popular. And so, again, and it's funny. I remember after that, even downloading more songs and them sounding different. And my 14-year-old brain just went, this is probably like, because like, this is what they sound. And then they like changed their so it's probably just like old or something. So dumb.
Like it's a relic. I gotta like keep it hidden and like no one else can touch it.
Well, and I remember seeing Bring the Horizon. I was just like, this can't be the same band. Like there's no way. Like so stupid.
Did you ever unfortunately get rickrolled off of downloading a song on LimeWire? Because I had that happen once or twice, and that was like devastating to me at the time. I'm like, I'm just trying to find music, and I have to listen to this dumb YouTube song.
So no, but also so never. Okay, I never got rickrolled off LimeWire. I did completely destroy our home computer with LimeWire somehow.
Oh, okay.
Which was great. But one time I downloaded like the Fire and Ice record when it came out, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, whenever that was.
Yeah.
And the version I got off like a blog spot, after every song was like somebody added in like Rick Astley or whatever. So after every song, it would just Rick
Oh
you,
my
and
god, no way.
I'm like, this is pretty good. Like you'd listen to the whole song and then it would happen, and then you'd be like, oh, maybe it was just on that one, and then the next one would be like,
oh,
like, oh, great.
Okay, whoever like sat down and took time out of their life to do that is like, that's some like evil brain kind of shit. That's some Joker brain kind of shit. Like, I'm gonna not put it in one song, but every single song.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like sorry, you can just my wife needs to go.
Oh yeah, that's all good.
It's fine. Just calling them.
Trying to sneak down.
Yeah, I mean, so like I definitely am like a big fan of any prank that like you don't really get to be around for, but you know that like whenever my old band, me and Ralph's old band would go on tour, like there would be a couple times where we'd like our guitar player, if he could find, like we were like a Del Taco or something, and there was like a printer he'd connect to, he would just send it like 100 copies of like a picture of a dog, because it's like you know that somebody's gonna walk back there and be like, who did this? So,
yeah.
Like, you know, you don't get to see the reaction, but you know that you get to make up the fun scenario in your head. But I don't know.
Two little things come to mind, and then I definitely want to talk about some Ingrown stuff. But sure. We've been going all over the map, but it's really.
I'm drinking a Mountain Dew. I'm going like 100 miles an hour. You got to wrangle me in. I will not. I'll lose all track of everything.
But two, as far as like having a practical joke that you might not see the person's reaction, but you just know in the back of your mind that it's probably a great reaction. The first apartment that I moved out before Bryn and I got married, when we were leaving, we had because it was always like we lived in an older building and like the neighborhood was fine, but when the day we moved in, I printed a photo of John Cena like doing this, and I put it above our doorway because I was like, anyone who breaks into our house will just have to, you know, meet John Cena because they can't see him, and it will, it's the veil of safety. Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
And sure. Then so when we were moving out, I was like, well, I'm not gonna throw this in the garbage, so like I put it instead of like right above, because probably our landlord would have seen it, taken it down, whatever. I put it on the inside of like my closet. So, you know, hopefully someone that lives in that unit one day will be like looking for their socks, and they'll look up and like, is that John Cena? Oh,
my friend just sold his house and had like these like big Halloween skeletons from Halloween, of course. And he put up in the garage, like there's like a crawl space above the garage, put that in there and it's holding a letter that says, I've been waiting for you. And I'm like, man, that guy's gonna get up there on a ladder and just see that shit and just like fall off and like just break his neck or something. But I'm like, that one's so good. The John Cena one's also like, that's such a, man, I would be so good when I moved into this house, there'd just been John Cena in here somewhere. I've been like, damn, this is fucking sick.
Yeah, but it's got to be like discreetly, like it's not just like a super high visual thing. Like it's
gotta be like, something that you like never.
It's like something's wrong with the sink, and then you gotta like go down, and then you're like, oh, what's up, John?
Yeah, what's up, man? Jesus Christ, he's down here too this whole time.
Yeah, and the other one, and this kind of goes back to what you're saying about the printer. And ironically, I learned this at the DPK 5-year, is that a lot of people, I think the default settings for like most people's like airdrops are like
just be
receive it from anyone. So anytime I'm like I think the last time I sent something really weird was we were on the ferry going from Vancouver Island back to Vancouver, and it was just like there was like 30 open airdrops, and I was like, I think I sent like a dank meme. I think it was from Mario 64 where you can like grab his face and like drag it around. So I grabbed the most obtuse looking one and then just like and you just see all the heads just like.
Dude, if you just name your like something really funny too, like because then they're just like, who's penis man or whatever sending me this weird game or whatever. Right, you gotta name it funny. It's all about doing it at like a restaurant. That's the way to do it. Cause then you're like looking around, dude. That's airdropping people random shit is number one for sure. I like that.
Absolutely. Well, Charlie, let's talk about some Ingrown stuff, because as far as the time of recording this, you guys have just started to kind of release a single for an LP that's coming out, and I've talked about it on the podcast as far as like I'm really excited for this next chapter of hardcore because I feel like a lot of bands have been sitting on these golden eggs as far as new records have come out.
Right.
And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot, but like I would always kind of like allude to you guys because, you know, this has been something that, you know, I feel like you guys specifically are one of those like very underrated bands, just because as far as where you're based geographically, but like any live set or set that I've seen of you guys have like blown me away and anyone else in the room. So I think it is that thing where I'm really excited for what it is, but yeah, it's been a long time coming. So yeah, tell me about like how, you know, the process of like writing, I guess, this record that's coming up, you know, and maybe even alluding on the production side, because if I'm remembering correctly, you did all the recording and whatnot for Shell, which is a single you guys dropped in 2020, and I'm sure there might be some pre-pro stuff. So yeah, tell me about like the process of making that record and what people can expect.
Yeah, okay. So like, you know, as you know, like I haven't been in the band. The DPK show is my first show with Ingrown.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was my first show. And that was like, you know, I mean, they've gone through a lot of different bass players. And I mean, I've known Dave and Ross since they were like in high school, literally. Like I've been friends with them forever. And I'd always been, you know, so like when they asked me to play bass at that show, it was just kind of like a, can you like fill in type of thing? Like, you know, because I'd mentioned wanting to do it before and they're like, yeah. So basically we did that. And then we did like one or two more shows or whatever. And there was never plans to like really write anything. And then Ross is like, I have an idea for songs. We wrote Shell, and then I recorded that as a demo, and then we sent it to Ian, and he was like, this sounds cool. And so we were like, let's just put it out. Fuck it. Like, let's just put out that single or whatever. And then in between, like that was like August, I think, because I think it came out like the night before we played OHC. So in between there and like that Lower Species tour we did, like most, it's, I mean, I'm gonna give Ross and Dave pretty much like almost all of the writing credit for sure, because I wasn't even here like when they wrote, like basically like we had some skeletons and some songs, and then I had to go to Vancouver for a little bit to do like immigration stuff with Sarah, and then when I came back they had like 7 songs written or something like that, or like at least the skeletons for everything, because Shell we already had. Lost at Sea that song's been written before I was probably even the band. I think we played that at DPK. And then Tough, that's on the record, that's from like the original demo, so that's like a re-recording of like the first Ingrown stuff. So pretty much all the other songs they pretty much had like written, like we had kind of maybe had bits and pieces, but when I came back from that trip they had like most of it down. And we pretty much just like before that Lower Species tour, like we should get a bunch of these songs like available to play on tour. Like we should just try to write them. So most of the songs, by the time we went into record, we had pretty much like had mostly down. Like there was like a lot of stuff like up until even like the week before going to Chicago to record that I think we were like adding in and stuff and like changing. But essentially like I demoed everything and we kind of like got like the baseline out for the whole thing, and just got it to the point where we're like, okay, we have enough money for 3 days to go to Chicago and do this. Like, let's just be where it needs to be, like as much as possible. So yeah, pretty much up until the week before we went to Chicago, we had just been like tweaking the songs, and we had been playing them even on tour and stuff before that, which is kind of silly. But and then we recorded it, and then with Andy Nelson, who is just awesome. Like that's like was like kind of almost like the dream guy I could think of. Like, I don't know, his recordings just sound so cool. And it was an awesome experience. Like he's awesome and nice, and like, I don't know, going to Chicago was fun. A million hot dogs. There's, you know, and then yeah, we basically had the record since like end of February, and then like the pandemic happened, and you know, we kind of were just like waiting for the right time to put it out. And like, I honestly think that if we would have had the video done sooner, it probably would have came out sooner to a degree, which I'm personally glad that it didn't. Like, I was kind of getting nervous. I was like, I hope people don't like, you know, kind of like not care about it, like waiting by the time it comes out. Like maybe like they'll be like, yeah, like it's been too long, like whatever. Like, so I was kind of nervous about like waiting this long, but yeah, pretty much after the record was done, we just kind of like over like last summer and up until a couple months ago, like we're just working on the video because it's only like a minute and a half long, but like we basically filmed like all those desert shots, and then pretty much shortly after that we did like those like a lot of like the motorcycle like dirt bike stunts, and then a bunch of people got sick, and so it was kind of like maybe we should just like hold off on doing all this, you know.
Okay.
And then once everybody kind of got like vaccinated or whatever, we kind of were just like, let's just like finish it. And pretty much just been like, yeah, we just waited to put it out. But other than that, it really was like maybe a couple months that those guys wrote like pretty much everything, and I just showed up and learned the songs. So.
Yeah,
which is good because I felt like before when I was kind of there for helping write some of the songs, like I don't know, Ross and Dave for that band just have such a like they've just been playing music together for so long. It's like they can just they don't have to say, they just think kind of almost like what it needs to be, and it's like, oh, it's like, and then it just comes out the way they want it to be. And like, you know, I felt like when I was there for it, I was kind of like messing up the process a little bit, like
okay,
you know, like just personally where I was like, yeah, like maybe I don't know, like maybe I don't know, like these guys have it figured out, like I'm just happy to like play whatever. I think they'll write cool stuff. So
I think it takes a level of not humility, well maybe humility, but I think it is when you can visually see that there's a connection between two musicians, and you know, like I'm very pro like too many cooks in the kitchen can create like not the best product, right? Because I think when you're growing up, you want to, you know, do as much as you can in the band, and you know, if you feel like, oh, you guys had a jam without me, even if it was intentional or not, like you feel almost backstabbed in a little bit of a way. But I've been on the other end of it where it's like I'm playing in bands where I have zero musical like I'm not contributing any like ideas. It's just like, hey, here are the songs, learn them, and totally okay with that. So I think and you know, every band is different. Some bands have like work really well and everyone is bringing all these different ideas and there's lots of collaboration, but some bands are like, yeah, it is this one dude or this one gal or whoever, and they're doing a lot of it, and some people just are totally cool to be passive and just let that, you know, system run its course, right?
One, it's also too, I think, like because you're right, because again, it can become too many cooks in the kitchen unless you have just that rare band where everybody's just like got the exact same like focus, right?
Sure.
And that's not to say like, you know, like again, my ideas weren't heard or like, you know, whatever, like it's nothing like that, like, you know, it's just kind of one of those things that's like where you enter a situation where you know, especially with like Ingrown, where it's like there's only 3 members at any time, right? And I play bass, so I'm not really writing the songs, right? Like, you know, I'm like I you know, I don't need to come in and like let my ego kind of try to like take anything over and maybe make it less good because I need to serve my own ego or my own, you know what I mean? Like that's the thing, is like I'm just happy to like play music with my friends and like be a part of it. And again, like I said, it's, you know, it's not like if I have an idea, they go like, shut up, or it's nothing like, there's nothing crazy like that. I kind of just had to like kind of stand back and be like, you know, like I don't need to like put all of my ideas on this, because again, like this band already exists. Like these guys already have like the thing. And I have things to contribute, and I play my role in the band, but at the same time, like, I don't need to like, you know, stroke my own ego by like making sure like my idea gets in there or whatever. Again, not saying it's not well received or whatever it is, or humored or whatever the term would be, but it's like I'm pretty comfortable with like just letting them like, you know, write the music, because it's, again, you know, it's like kind of a unique experience, like joining a band you liked before. It's like, you know, I don't, it's like I wouldn't join a band I loved and all of a sudden be like, we need to fucking mix it up, because it's like, you know, like that would just suck, you know, like that's like that's their band, you know. So like I said, they hammered those songs out. Like I swear, like they'd practice like almost every other day while I was gone, and they would just send me a video, but we wrote this one today. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. Like some of the songs, even I feel like I was like, there was like 2 songs on the record that like I basically learned everything or like most of it in like before I had to record it.
Oh,
okay. And then since then have just like not been able to remember how to play them right. Like luckily there are songs that I don't know if they'd be like live songs. Like I mean whatever maybe, but like luckily like the hardest song on the record like I don't. I mean again maybe if people really like it and well then we'll end up playing it. But and it's a sick song. It's like probably the craziest song on the record. But I cannot like we tried to play it at practice the other day and I was like I can't. It's so hard. I'm not really. I mean you know I'm just kind of I play bass so I can kind of just like fuck around enough where I'm just moshing on stage and like you know hitting the parts, but it's like that one's so technical and I'm like if I'm not hitting these it's gonna sound like I'm gonna fucking all of it. So.
Yeah, but to even take it a step back, like as far as you know maybe the serendipity of like the video taking a little longer than expected, and then you know maybe that has you know pushed things on. Like it is interesting to see because I think everyone's talked about. Like or bands have had a little bit of thoughts of like, are we gonna put out a big record and is anyone gonna give a fuck about it? You know, when shows come back in 3 months, 6 months, a year, like you know, we didn't really know, and now we're just starting to see some of those things come to fruition. But I don't know, like you know, I know the You're the Knife had their like record release show for you know internal incarceration, and it seemed that like so many people were like. Just so like you know that didn't feel old material to them, right? And same thing with like Drain, like they put out a really killer record that really boosted them up, you know, played you know to 2,000 people and just like going nuts. So yeah, like I do think that you know like and even a little bit sooner, like God's Hate putting out their newest record in February, like you know the first God's Hate show is going to be absolutely madness. It doesn't need to be like within a month's time of that coming out though.
Right. Well, and even with this, like we, you know, because it's all been so unpredictable, like, you know, pretty much like I think everybody like maybe a month or 2 ago kind of had this point where it's like, all right, it seems like touring is a possibility or at least even just like playing shows. So let's start working on our timeline because, you know, like the record's, you know, coming out next month. Right. And so with that being said, it's like, you know, there's still a possibility that, you know, like COVID could get crazy again and they shut everything down and it kind of flies. It's like, you know, at this point where it's like, it's kind of the risk we're having to take because it's like, we can't really sit on it forever. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's got to come out. So
yeah. The golden egg eventually might get spoiled if it's sat on for too long, right?
Right. And that's the other thing is like, you know, you mentioned Drain. That was like the first one that came to mind where I was like, you know, like they put this record out like pretty much like a week before like everything got crazy, right? And it's like and I'm really happy to see like that, you know, it kind of gave me that reassurance of like, and granted, like Drain's like the band, right? So it's like we're not Drain. So it's not like it would have probably been different for us, but it is exciting to be like, you know, like, all right, now like because the thing is like California rips, you know, and it's like they can play a show for 2,000 people because it's awesome.
Yes.
And I'm not saying Idaho's not awesome, but like the thing is like Idaho is kind of weird in the sense that there's not a lot of bands from Idaho really, period, that really do a lot of crazy stuff. There are bands that exist, but you know, if you live in like, I don't know, San Francisco, whatever, like Metallica is like a local band or whatever. And if you live in Los Angeles, you know, like most everyone's favorite hardcore bands are probably local bands. Same thing, New York, Boston, whatever. With Idaho, there's this like weird, it feels like it's like this thing where it's like because there's not a lot of bands that really make it or like do big crazy stuff, like people feel about their local bands as if they're just local bands, right? So like you know, it is really nice to see all these bands that put out records right when the shit happened having like people still care. Like it's awesome, like, and I'm like really happy it went that way, and it seems like everything's going better than it even I think anyone would have anticipated like immediately. I don't know if it would have went the same for us, like it's hard to say, but I am glad we did wait a little bit because like I said, it's like, you know, worst case scenario now it's like well, they shut it down, I guess. You know, like that's really all it could be. But it's like, I don't know. I think we waited so long that we like, I think the response has been like, I don't know, like blowing me away for sure. Like how many people have been like excited, like seems to be excited about it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's nice. Again, it's kind of hard because everybody's also putting out their records at the same time, which makes sense. Like everybody's been sitting on these things that they've been like waiting to put out. So you know, it's a lot happening right now, but like I feel pretty fortunate that like people have like seemed as excited as they are about it. So.
Yeah. Let's dig a little bit deeper into like, you know, like you mentioned at the top of the episode, you ride hard for Boise. And I feel like a lot of people that your bands, Rejection Pact or Ingrown, have gone to have like really, you know, the Western Canada Boise connection is very, very strong. So, you know, as far as like you were saying, Idaho maybe not having that like signature band that's kind of you know, that the world knows about. They're just like, what's in Idaho for music? Sure. But like I think out of most of the bands, like I think Ingrown is definitely one of those key players. And you know, like I feel like that's almost like the initial handshake into that like underdog scene. Like same thing with like I never would have thought like there would be any hardcore in like North Dakota, and then it's like I see Swing Low play and now I'm like best friends with the majority of those guys. So you know how has that been, you know, having that like not like responsibility, but there's almost like this pressure of like, oh, now we have a little bit of interest from other people that come from bigger hardcore scenes and they know about Ingrown, and how do you guys like kind of strategize of like, okay, how can we push it up? And even as far as the time of recording this, you guys were on the you know, Revolver, you know, songs that need to listen to now. And it was funny. I was like, it makes looking like living in Boise can be fun.
It's so funny that like every like person that's wrote about it almost so far has seemed to like almost like poke a little fun at being from Idaho, and it makes sense. Like
sure,
I get it. Like, people like I work at a job where I talk to people on the phone all day, and I tell them I'm from Idaho at the beginning of like every phone call, and they always are like they always just think it's Ohio or something. Like they just don't even know it exists. And I only talk to people from California. It's like we're like on the same side of the country. Yeah, I mean, as far as it goes, it's like the thing is so I think so for like, okay, so for me, when I was like coming up and started getting again like more into hardcore and stuff, there was like one main band to me from Boise that like really like made it seem possible. There's a band for me right now called Throws, and they're also really good and they do cool stuff, and everyone should check them out. And then before that though, they were all in a band called Bone Dance, and it's the same exact band basically minus like one dude. But so Bone Dance toured all the time, and they played like Fest, and they like, you know, got to play with like, again, they were like really good friends with a lot of band, like people like really put on for Bone Dance all over. They toured really hard. And it was like, I'm not saying other bands from here haven't done cool stuff or toured, but that one for me was always like, well, like these guys are doing it. Like the fact that they're from here, like doesn't really matter. Like they're just going out and like doing it and like playing hard and like touring as much as they can and stuff. And so, I mean, I pretty much just since like having that inspiration, I've just tried to make every band that I've ever been in tour as much as anyone can and stuff. And I think it's important to, again, and you know, this is to any other band in Boise other than just Ingrown or Rejection Pact or whatever. It's like, it really is just all about like making people realize that you exist and that they want to come through here, because bands not coming and playing Boise isn't helping people get into music, right? Like we played a show last night to, I'm not kidding, like probably 300 people, and it was all locals. It was Grave Titan's record release. And this metal band from here, like basically who were all, you know, 18 or whatever, all their friends came out, and I'm not kidding, like I'm not exaggerating, like there was probably 300 people there last night. That's like insane. Probably biggest like straight local show, right? But, and so that's the thing is like, it really is one of those things where it's like, it's important for me to make sure that people know that Boise exists as far as like us, again, putting on for Boise, because it's like, you know, we're not out of the way of a lot of places. If you play Seattle and you're going to play Salt Lake, you have to pass through here, right? And we get skipped over constantly, right? and it's important to make it known that like we exist, like not even just Ingrown or Reject, again, just Boise. There's people here that like hardcore. There's people here like metalcore. There's people here like music, and like, you know, like again, we will come to the shows, right? Like maybe it's not again the biggest turnout ever because we're a small city, but it's like it really is important for me to make sure that like people know that Idaho exists, so that people from Idaho like have the opportunity to like see bands they like, play with bands they like, you know. And then also when they go out and tour somewhere and they tell people they're from Boise, people aren't like never even heard of that or whatever, you know, like
Right.
it's, I don't know, like maybe that's kind of a weird way to answer the question, but I don't know, like it just it's hard. I'm sure again you live in like, you know, like Midwestern Canada basically, right? Like, you know, it's one of those things of a band's touring through Canada, like they have to play there, and it's a, you know, it's a major city, right?
Yeah,
but
it's a little challenging because it's very easy for bands to skip up from Seattle to Vancouver and then like skip right back down, and that is the extent of a lot of people's Canadian touring. They go and play Detroit, and then they'll like skip up to Toronto and they'll skip back down. And I am super empathetic, and I totally understand that like the drives from Vancouver to Calgary are, you know, you're driving through the mountains. It's 12 hours. It's not like a 2-hour stint, but you know, like it is so crucial. Like you said, like the scene, any scene won't grow if, you know, these newer bands are coming to town. Like you were mentioning, you played a show last night, all locals, 300 people, but that can't be sustained with the same, you know, circling, you know, door of local bands. Like you need to have the times where it's like, oh, some band from Paris is coming through, and you're like, what the fuck? Okay. And then you go to that show, or like, you know, and I feel like any band that like does those really like that come from a long ways away, not like, oh, you're in the town over or the province over or the state over. Those are the ones that stick with me for a long time. Like, there was these two bands, Lapsaria and Blessing, and they're both from like Ontario. They drove like, and you know, for the people that don't know Ontario and Alberta, that's like a 2 days worth of driving, and they only played. They only played 2 shows. They played Edmonton and Calgary, and then drove all the way back home. And it's like that makes 0 sense. But the fact that they did that is like something that I have brought up constantly on this podcast, and like still remember. Like if they put out any new music, it's like, you know, I'm gonna probably pump that up a little bit more than I would some random band just DMing me about some cool riff that they wrote, you know? So it's that constant recognizing of you know, showing respect and support for those bands that are like really going out, like, hey, we are coming out here. And like you were saying, like being aware that like you're not going to draw the same amount of people in Boise, Idaho that you would maybe in LA. But at the same time, LA might have like 3 other hardcore shows that same night, and like, you know, different things. So it's a constant supply and demand kind of checking of boxes, you know?
And I think too, you know, and I'm sure, I think a lot of places, I know right now are going to struggle with this, especially because again, it's like a lot of venues probably couldn't stay open during the pandemic. Like, right, there's nothing happening. It's hard because it's like, we don't really have that like main central location. A lot of our places to have shows either get shut down because it's like, you know, again, like that place I was talking about earlier with all the metalcore shows, that place was like the place that like every type of show came through, again, except for like regular hardcore. Like you'd go to a metalcore show from time to, like if you went and saw like the Ghost Inside, you might see like a hardcore band on tour with them at that show.
Sure.
But you wouldn't see like a regular hardcore tour there, right? Like at least after a certain period of time. But you have this central location where it's like, I know where to look for shows, and I like, oh, a show's coming, I'm gonna like check out this band. And like, you know, you have that central location for kids who are younger. And also it's the place where it's like, we're having an all local show, and you get like younger kids involved. And then through finding out about the place, they find out about the other shows. And then if they like it, they stick around. And if they don't care as much, then they don't. And it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But I think especially for Boise, like not having that like designated place that's especially like centered at kids, like with like Boise specifically, like there's a lot of places to go see music, but a lot of them are bars, you know, like we have the Neurolux and the Olympic venue. Both places are really cool, but because again, the music scene's not big enough to sustain just having shows, and you know, the bar's part of the where the people are. It's like it's got to be 21 plus, which is unfortunate, right? So it's like, I think for a while, ever since that main all ages venue shut down, and then we had this like other coffee shop for a while that was having cool shows, and then that got shut down, turned into a brewery, like everything else here. Like ever since then, it's like, you know, like last night was probably like the most like amount of like actual kids I've seen at a show in like I don't remember how long. You know what I mean? It's like, so that's the thing, is like having a place where it's like younger people can go and like get excited about music is so crucial. And that's the other thing, is like, you know, I want to make sure that anything I do here like is all ages, right? And anything I do is like centered at like you know, kids. Like obviously music is for everybody, but at the same time, it's like that show last night was just solidified to me, where I was just like, you know, like you said, it's like it's not sustainable just to have these local shows forever, right? Because it's like people eventually are going to be like, I'm not going to just go see my friend's band every single time, or maybe they will, but like what's going to keep those people excited is like introducing them to stuff, just like I did, where it's like I was like into metal and then I stumbled upon heavier music or hardcore through that, right? And now here I am. So it's like, you know, those younger kids here, especially for Idaho, like they need to like see those cool bands, and they need to like have their friend's band play with a cool band and like be exposed to different stuff. And if bands don't come through here and play, or if they don't know we exist, it's like it's never going to happen, right? But yeah, it's super important for me to make sure that like people know that it's like, again, we exist here, Idaho exists, like, you know, it's not just some nowhere dumb place where none of us exist, you know, like I don't know, it's important to me.
Yeah, I had a realization when you were bringing up just like all ages, and I guess all ages is a different age for different places, because up here in Canada, the legal drinking age is 18, but in the States it's 21. So like that's a crucial 3-year time gap, even just for getting into like a certain like subgenre or like some kind of passion, right? And I think it's like even if it was like, if we went on the lower side of the 18 plus, and there are kids who are just graduating and they're like wanting to get out and do, you know, they played their first show, they want to go on and tour. It's like, oh, you're 17. Oh yeah. You can't play this. Like that's, you know, that's a unnecessary roadblock. That's like very easily fixed by just, you know, okay, you know, we're filtering out all these places because it can't be all ages. Like, you know, my friend Jessa and I were in the midst of like trying to figure all that out, where it's like a place will be like it's like a bar, but then it's like, okay, well, you're closed on Sundays, so could we do an all ages show that day? And they're like, yeah, why not? So those are the things that we're trying to navigate, and like you were saying, setting that as the standard versus like having that as an afterthought.
Right. Because I mean, I do get it. It's like, you know, it's, if you're just a venue, it's like you're not making a ton of money, right? In reality, it's like, you know, everybody knows that. So it's like you have to sell alcohol. Like I fully get it. It's not my like inner straight edge dickhead being like, fuck that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I fully get it, you know? And like, but again, it's like, and I think there's room for both things to exist, as much as I, you know, hated missing tons of bands I liked when I was under 21. Like, you know, I think there's room for both of those things to exist, but it's like, it can't just be only one, right? It has to be, there has to be like, again, like music for people. Cause it's like, I don't know, like, I'm sure if you know, like if you live in like a college town that is like big enough where there's hardcore and stuff, it's like, you probably get a lot of new people just coming that are like, I'm here for college, so I'm going to go to a lot of shows and stuff. But like, and Boise has a big university that people come to a lot and stuff, but it's like, again, it's just, that's not really, I don't know, maybe our school doesn't like it. I mean, it's just kind of weird with Boise. It's like, if you see, I'm sure a lot of places are like this, but it's like, if you're in Boise and you're at the store and you see a person with like a hardcore shirt on and you're like, who the fuck is that? And like, cause you don't know them, it is like the weirdest thing. You're like, somebody new. And you have to go be like, oh, man, like, where are you from? Are you from here?
Yeah.
Cause it's that, like, again, it's like,
it's that uncommon.
Right. To see somebody wearing like, again, like an actual hardcore, like that it's kind of funny. So like I said, it's like, I I really hope that, again, with the Ingrown record and stuff, and like even like with all the Idaho stuff in it and stuff too, it's like it's kind of funny because like that decibel thing, they're like the American Midwest, and I'm like, that's not where it is, but all right. It's just, again, it's like I hope people from like Idaho even see that and go like, oh, cool, like like this is for Idaho. I don't know, like that's the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think like to go back to what you were saying about like most scenes will have that like local legend that like goes a step beyond and takes that scene's name out to the world, or puts that city on the map, if you want to call it that. But I think that needs to not just like, okay, that band did it for this town. It needs to be like there needs to be one for almost like every generation. So like I think about in Saskatchewan, like Means was kind of that band when I was getting into hardcore that was like very, putting that province on the map. But then, a number of years later, after that band breaks up and things like that happen, like now Stepping Stone is that band that like, Sask HC, like shit like that. So, I think about that on a constant basis, like growing up in Winnipeg, like it was always like Comeback Kid were the hometown heroes, if you want to call it that. But I haven't personally seen that like one Winnipeg band to really like get that exposure and that blow up. And, again, it's like, oh yeah, Winnipeg, that's where it all kind of plays a part in that.
Well, and it sucks for you guys, because it's like, from what I've understood, it's like being a Canadian band, at least now, I mean, maybe it wasn't as hard before, but it seems especially hard for y'all to come down this way without having to get some like bullshit work visas and stuff. And I'm not saying I want them to not make it easier for us to come up. I just don't understand why it's so easy for us to come up. But like, it seems like it would be like, if we can come up there and do this without having any bullshit, like you guys could too.
Yeah.
I never really understood that, but I can talk about, it's crazy because I feel like you could be from a major Canadian city, which is, in reality, most of them, right? Like everybody seems to live like. But it's like I feel like that's even harder. Like, so it's like I commit, dude. Any band from any Canadian like really doing it, I'm like that's fucking awesome, because you have to deal with so much more bullshit. Because it's like, if you're like being in Idaho, it's like, like the next closest big city to play would be like Salt Lake, and that's like 5 hours. Next one after that, 8 hours, right? If you're on the East Coast, everything's close, but here everything is a minimum 6, 7, 8, 9 hour drive, whatever.
Yeah.
But with that being said, it's like, if you're in Canada, it's like you really can't, like, if you're in the middle, there's not like, oh, we'll just go over here and then we'll just loop back around. It's again, even just touring Canada, pretty crazy. And then any Canadian bands coming in here, and I'm like, that's fucking so awesome. Like, because again, it's like that, talk about like really like being like, I'm willing to put up with some like actual bullshit to like do this. It's like, I don't know. It's super, super awesome. I don't know.
Yeah. I think the minute that some like new rules come into play, where it's like, oh, it is the same for US bands to come to Canada as it is for us to go down there.
Right.
It's going to be, it's such an open door for bands from up here to really get their name out. And like, I do feel like there is like a little bit of like chances that are given from either festivals. Like, I find like a lot, I can name drop like, and I won't specifically, but I can name drop certain fests that like are pretty intentional of like, we want to have at least one or not two Canadian bands represent on this fest. And, there's been some cool opportunities that I've seen for other, like Worldview playing like For the Children in California. Yes. But again, like you said, like it's one thing to at least get that opportunity. It's another thing for those bands to like just figure out how to actually do that. Right. Because it's
right. Because it's like, it's like, I'm sure like, talking like Misery Signals dudes all the time. It's like, with Jesse and Stu, and even when Carl's like those guys being Canadian, I'm sure it's like a lot easier to like hop on a plane, be like, I'm just going down to the States or whatever, and then be like, okay, I'll start the tour here. Like, let alone, but like being again, and I'm not speaking for them. It could have been real fucking big pain in the ass. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I imagine that situation's one thing, but dude, being a whole band from Canada and like putting your gear in the back, like, and being like, yo, we're just like going down here to like record. We're not playing shows, but we'll be, and then they're like, like, all right, I fucking guess, like,
yeah.
Nah, man. And like the work visa thing, like every time you have like dude, I don't know. It just is so crazy to me, like that it exists like that. It's really lame.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. On
I'm
behalf
sorry
of the
for
US. On behalf of your government, I'm sorry.
Yeah, big to everybody on behalf of our government. I'm sorry.
I love that. Charlie, I feel like it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't talk about a band that I guess is like, how do I want to describe Swarm Beating? I feel like that was like a unicorn kind of moment. So for those that don't know, DPK 5-year anniversary, 5 shows in 3 days because Taylor and the rest of the gang is absolutely crazy. So they did a pre-show on a Friday, a day show on Saturday, night show on Saturday, day show on Sunday, night show on Sunday. So packed full of bands. And it was one of those things where I was like, I need to film this many bands in this short amount of time because no one else is going to do it. I knew that it would be a missed opportunity. So I went down there, and I think collectively anyone that's listening or watching this podcast who was there can safely say that like Swarm Beating definitely had like a top 3 sets out of all those bands. And, like Integrity's headlining. There was like, I'm trying to think, like Drain played, Hands of God, Lower Species. So again, all that being said, can you like give a little bit of context for the people that have never heard that name before, and I guess like what that entailed? Because since then there's been nothing happening with that band, and I've been very, I'm sure, punishing to you and the rest of the Ingrown guys of like, when, like, how can we get this back in action?
Well, it's so funny. So like that band starts. So okay, the only music that's out is that like demo, and that the original lineup of that band I think was Ross, Alex, Mike, Herman, and Dave. And when they first started, it was basically like, we're just gonna cover Irate, and then I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna punch everybody because I'm like, it's like whatever. Just like, again, it wasn't like a joke, but it was like, it was like, let's start like a just a hard ass like New York style band. And so I don't even know how that ended up being the case. Like, I just think like I recorded the demo for them, and I was like, if you guys ever want, like, I'd play second guitar because that'd be fun. And so then I ended up doing that, and then I don't know, Mike just didn't end up playing bass anymore, and Dave was like, I want to play bass, so you play drums. And then we're like, oh, well, like, what if we just tuned like way lower and just did that? So then Ingrown got asked to play the thing, and I don't even know how it got brought up for Swarm Beating to play. Like, maybe maybe got asked, I guess. And dude, we were like, oh, it's gonna be fun. Like, well, this will be like one of our first sets, like, as this lineup, yada yada. But I just like did not expect people to like give a shit about that as much as they did. Like, and it was awesome because I just remember playing and just like looking at me like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? Like, people like know the songs, or like, and they're just like moshing. So I just remember being like blown away. And then we covered that Irate song, and everybody like freaked out, and it was fucking sick. And I was like, oh, this was awesome. But I was like, oh yeah, like, there's crazy bands playing this weekend, and like people would like not stop talking about that Swarm Beating set. And it was, we were like all so hyped. We're like, that's so funny. And the day after that fest, like, we had like Ingrown was supposed to play Boise with
Hands of God, right?
It was like Hands of God and Drain of Momentum. And I don't know why we just didn't play, and Swarm Beating just played instead. Like, we're like, fuck it. Like, we'll just do Swarm Beating. Fuck it. We're like,
you're on the Swarm Beating high. Like, let's just keep it going.
And like, I don't know. Right. Well, and we played a couple shows, and like, it was fun. I honestly, like, I think the only reason that like didn't do more was because like we were, I think at that point, like, kind of like getting back into focusing on Ingrown.
Sure.
And, and like, I don't know, like, at this point I'm like kind of bummed. I wish, like, there's a lot of like stuff that we were going to record that like we like started doing, and like it never ended up coming out. And like, it's been like, I think, brought up here and there and stuff, but it was a very like short-lived thing that I think like I again was pretty stoked that people were like so hyped on. I just thought it was like kind of almost like, not like funny in like a bad way. Just, I did not expect people to like be so into it. It was funny. I mean, it was cool. Again, maybe one day, like, we'll record those songs we never like ended up doing anything with, because they're cool. Like, I'd like to, but I just remember like when we were playing that, I was like, we don't even have merch. Like we'll just fucking play, I guess. Like we don't even have merch, like whatever. Like none of the songs we're playing like are even the same now. Like they're all like,
Right.
I don't know. That shit was really fun. I had a great time at that whole fest, especially because of that. I again did not expect people to like freak out as much about that as they did.
Yeah, and I think it's like one of those moments where it's like this crazy thing that is super unexpected for a lot of people at the fest, for you guys, unexpected for me, like behind the camera being like, oh yeah, like, I recognize a lot of these chaps, and just like seeing the response was crazy. So it's like one of those sets that, like if something happens in the future, that'd be cool. But if it was just that, I feel like that video is such like a, anytime I'm like trying to direct someone to like a first scoped exposure set that isn't like a super big band that I filmed, that's like, it's always like, you have to listen and watch the SWARM Beating set. So
yeah, I definitely like, I had a great time that whole weekend. Like, I love Vancouver. And at the time, like, my wife and I were still like long distance before we were married and stuff. And so I just had a great time that whole weekend. And I like, I was excited to play. I was excited to see all the bands. I was really stoked to see Sarah and stuff. But like, again, yeah, had no idea that people would have been that. It was, I don't know. It's still, to me, like looking back, I'm just like, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Like, like that was the thing people freaked out about. Because again, you're right. Like there was, man, so many fucking like crazy bands playing that weekend, and all of them had 6 sets. And everybody, I'm not saying like we fucking do, but I just, again, when you put up that thing of like, what set does everybody want? Everybody voted like for us,
I think yeah, you guys were second because Juice was first, because they had people moshing to their sample at the very beginning.
I regret so badly not going to that pre-show. Like again, we like just gotten there, and I was like, I really want to go, but I was like, we drove so far, like in 2 cars through like snow and shit, and like I was like, I just want to like not go do anything, and I fully regret not going, because that fucking set, I was like, fuck, I really missed out. It looks so sick.
Yeah.
Had I known the 333 was going to go anywhere either, I probably would have made it another point. Actually, it's funny. Speaking of Vancouver, like the last show I went to before the pandemic happened was that Sanctioned show up there.
Oh, and, with Typecast, Dying Wish. Yeah.
I just like happened to be up there, and I was like, oh no. I was like, because I think, I don't know about everybody else. I don't know if anyone else was in this mood of like you almost like, you almost take it for granted. You're like, maybe I'll skip the show. I don't know. Like, again, you just go so much. And then looking back, I'm like, I'm pretty glad I didn't, because it was, again, like the last opportunity to like go to a show until last night and like see tons of friends and stuff. But I don't know, that venue that they have up there in New West is very, very sick. Definitely looking back, I'm like, especially with that Juice show, I'm like, fuck, I gotta not be that way. I gotta like stop, like for a while there, I think I was like trying to get in this headspace of like, I can't let like FOMO consume my life, because then I'll just end up like doing something that maybe I was like, like I'll just fucking stand here, I guess, or whatever. Like I just wish I would have stayed home or whatever. I'm old and goofy, but
I think it's like maybe just a balancing of the scales, because I think like no one anticipated something as big as a worldly pandemic to like essentially suck the life out of hardcore for almost 2 years. Everyone felt like, oh yeah, I can go to the show, I can not go to the show. There was always going to be hardcore shows, right? But now I feel like we're going to have a little bit of a season where it's like people are trying to get to as much as possible because they've been deprived for so long. But like realistically speaking, like I know some people might carry that on like 5-10 years into being in hardcore, and some people like a year after are like, yeah, I'm gonna stay home, or I'll go to the next show. And
I think like during that point in life, I was just so like, I had so much going on, like doing all that immigration stuff and like a million bands and like a million shows. Like it was awesome. Like looking, like there was like a 6-month period of the pandemic where I just basically stopped talking, like not talking, but like hanging out with people that weren't who I live with, because I was like deathly terrified of getting sick for whatever. And it really made me go like, man, like I started thinking, I was like, I fucking should have done this, and I should have like had more fun. Like it just really put me in that perspective where I was like, I took a lot of it for granted. I think a lot of people are at that point too, where it's like people are just like so like realize like it was so missing from their lives, right? Because it's like you go to so many shows and you play so many, it's like it just eventually you're just like, fuck, like we're just always doing this. Like I'm not saying like I would have ever like stopped or like not appreciated it, but it really, I think again, for a lot of people too, like really put in perspective like how much like important it is to like have that exist in that capacity, you know?
For sure. Yeah, and you know, like it's, you know, as you get older, you know, it becomes, you know, other things in life are at play, and sometimes it's harder to go like to spend an entire evening standing in a room that's super loud and then you get home super late. You know, I remember when I was first going to local shows, it was like, you know, and get food after the gig and get home at 3 a.m. and go to work at 8 o'clock and do it all the next weekend or whatever. But like,
and now you're almost 30 and you're all, I gotta get to bed by like 11:30 or I'm gonna be shit the next day.
Yeah. And then like, who's gonna look after the dogs? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So
yeah, I trust me, last night I was like, we loaded in, I was like, oh fuck, like I gotta go home and like I gotta go feed the dogs. And then we went and got food after last night. It was like 12:30 and I'm all, fuck, like I gotta go home. Like it's late, you know. Before it'd have been like, we're going to Old Chicago, we're shutting it down.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Yeah, getting older it's really cool, but it fucking also sucks like a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Like it's cool to be older and be like, oh, I can like do the stuff now a little bit. Like my life is in order, but it also sucks to be like just old.
Yeah.
Like granted, somebody older than me is gonna be like, fuck off. But like again, like you know, it's like you're because are we the same age? You 28?
28. Yeah, you got
it. So it's like, you know, it's like you're like, I'm still in my 20s, but like not for much fucking longer.
Right.
And granted, it's like, you know, 30s is, you know, like I think I'm pretty afraid of getting to 30, but like having friends who are in the 30s, it's like, you know, it's fucking whatever. It's just a number. But again, you get that you're like, fuck man, like I'm getting old. Like, oh man, just all your responsibilities. I'm old now.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think maybe it feels a little bit more amplified because it's like, oh, you're an old head now. Now you have like some like out of date opinion about hardcore. It's like, well, no, I feel like I'm pretty in line with some things, but I am getting into that old head territory for sure. So
last night we were the oldest band playing because it was like great. You know, Grave Times guys aren't that much younger than all of us, and like because a Hunter in Grave Times, he's the youngest member of Rejection Pact, and everybody else is like Ralph and Devin and Nathan are all like in their early 30s. And then, you know, but it's like everybody other band, I was like, this is so it was like the first time I think I've ever been like, oh weird, like we're the old guy band.
Yeah.
I was like, this is fucking strange. Like,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and I think for me, like it was almost like I blinked my eyes because like growing up, I was always like looking up at like an older generation, whether it was like through bands or like different things in friend groups. And then it was like, oh, now I'm the older person that, you know, the youth is looking up to. Yeah.
It feels weird. I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to say anyone's like, you know, looking up to us or anything, but not saying that that's what you're saying, but like, it is one of those things where it's like, you know, you eventually have that epiphany. You're like, oh shit, like I am now the older person around, you know, like, I don't know. And then it's like, I guess I have some advice I could give because maybe I'm in that position. I mean, it's weird, especially again, like with the pandemic, it's like we lost like a whole like year and a half.
Yeah. Time is a little wacky. You're like, did this happen last year or, oh no, it was 2 years ago now.
Yeah. Fuck. It's weird. Like last night I was like, it doesn't really feel like it's been this long. Like it kind of just feels like almost like the next day a little bit of just like, oh yeah, like load up, we'll do it. Like you just get back into the routine. But there were a couple moments like where I was like, fuck man, like it's been like so long since like the last time, because last show I played was at the Shredder, the same place we played last night with the Rejection Pact, and then the first show back. So again, it like felt exactly the same, but also completely like nothing had changed about the place. So maybe it was like that setting of being like the exact same place made it feel weird, but
yeah, familiar, and then you can kind of slide back into that old set of skin or whatever. Yeah. Well, Charlie, I want to be sensitive of your time, but yeah, this has been a really, really fun conversation. You know, glad that we got to finally make it happen.
I talked too much because I'm bad about. Again, you guys should have told you, hey, you got to wrangle me in, or I'll just never stop talking. So,
no. I loved all the tangents that we hit. The last portion of the podcast is a favorite mosh story that you would like to share. So that is literally anything that's the first to your mind. Doesn't need to involve you directly or indirectly. Whatever's like the first thing. Could be gruesome, could be funny, could be Ingrown related, could be Rejection Pact related, could be Swarm Beating related.
Okay. I got two quick ones. So
Yeah.
okay, one of my favorite. This is, I don't even know if this is how Mosh. I guess it's kind of so. The Lower Species tour that Ingrown did, we played Black Lodge in Seattle, and I think okay. So we were playing, and there was this like just like old crust punk man or just some guy. It's just some fucking dude with a dirty vest on, and he was like you know like there's always that like I saw like I don't know whatever. It's like there's just always that like tension between dudes who are like fucking karate dancers and they're like pushing everybody. Like there's just always that guy at like a big enough show or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy was like really just being like, I think like to the point where people were like, fuck off, like fuck you. And somebody started fucking beefing with him and Ross goes, fuck that guy up, fuck his ass up. And like, I don't think he thought that people were really just going to do it. But I just see a fucking arm come around this guy's neck and then just fucking fist. And they they drag him out and he just disappears into the darkness. And externally, I was like cool. But internally, I was like, what the fuck? And it was so funny because after the set or whatever, like I didn't see the guy again. But Ross's cousin who came to the show, like came up to Ross and he's like, you had that guy fucking killed. What did you do? They fucked him up. I was like, dude, holy fucking shit. Like, all you had to do was just go, fuck him up, fuck that guy up. Like, and people just fucking, it was so, like.
That's an insane amount of power. Like, just.
Dude, because again, I don't think that we thought that we could say that and somebody would just fucking do it.
Right.
So there's that story. And then, let's see here. What's another good one? Fucking. One time, this isn't even like, I don't know. One time Code Orange played here for Mayhem Fest, and like the night before, me and Devin just hit him up. And we're like, yo, you guys want to play like a house show that night in Boise? And they're like, sure, I guess. So we like booked it like literally like the night before it was supposed to happen. And so but that morning it was like noon, and I'm like not like skinny by any means, but I used to be like a lot fatter. Like I used to be so fat, and I used to eat like fast food every single fucking day. And so I was like, I'm going to go out to Mayhem and see Code Orange, and I'm going to fucking, because I Am King had like just came out and I was fucking hyped. And so I drove out to Nampa, which is like, you know, like it's like 30 minutes from here. It's like where the big like amphitheater is. And I like got Sonic for breakfast, and then it was really hot. And me and Alex Marshall, like Swarm Beating, like were the only people that like I think really knew Code Orange, because it was like again a metal festival and it's in Idaho. And I moshed so hard, which wasn't even that hard. I was just so fat and out of shape. And it was in the sun that I fucking projectile vomited everything ever that I'd eaten, like all over the grass after, because I was just like, I got so fucking just like hot and like out of breath. And then Alex punched the ground and like broke his hand or something, like had to go to the hospital and like had a cast on.
Oh my God.
And then that same night, like saw him again in like a fucking cramped basement. And it was really fun. A Hunter from Rejection Pact and stuff like was like, there's a video of it, you can totally see it, was like pretty young, probably like, I don't know. I mean, probably still in high school. I mean, Hunter up until a certain point has always looked like a little kid. And then one day he just had a handlebar mustache. And then I'm like, oh, you're like a grown man.
Yeah.
But he was like, there's a video of it. I'll send it to you after this, but he's like moshing, and this dude that I know, like, you just see Hunter just come out flail, and then you just see this elbow just hit Hunter so hard, and he just fucking like collapses into like the crowd and stuff. It was just like a day of like crazy bullshit. So yeah, probably that, and then yeah, the Ross in Seattle shit. I'm like, God, man.
Yeah, I was hoping you would balance the scales with something really like violent with something kind of funny, and seeing you projectile vomit after like just going super hard for Code Orange. Dude, like I was scared that you were gonna say that you were vomiting mid mosh, and I was like, whoa, that's dangerous.
Oh, that would have been way cooler. I think now with like the events that have happened the last 2 years, everybody would be way more upset about that than then.
For sure.
Yeah, I probably didn't even mosh that hard. I probably moshed 2 songs and then was and then was like, I gotta keep going. And it was like, you know, it was July in Idaho, so it's probably already 100 degrees. Yeah, man, just fucking died.
Dude,
fucking died.
That's insane. Well, yeah, great stories. Charlie, again, this has been really fun to actually have some official one-on-one time with you. If there's anything that you want to plug, shout out, send the people off with, the floor is yours for whatever you got. Obviously, all your links will be in the description of the video, but if there's something you want to send the folks off with, it's your time to do that.
Okay. New Ingrown, you know, video if you want to go watch it. You want to pre-order the thing, would really appreciate it. It means a lot. Rejection Pact working on a new record. Grave Titan just put out a thing. It's really good. Natural Evil. Lots of good Boise bands doing stuff. Shout out Boise hardcore. That's my plug.
Yeah. I was like,
Boise is Vancouver. Vancouver is Boise.
Yeah. Set the record straight for anyone who was confused on that point.
No, if you were confused, Boise is a Canadian city. You can gladly absorb us. I don't know how that would work, but make us
just add a little dip into the shape of the
bottom. We'll move it over there.
Yeah.
No, for real. Vancouver, number one. I've said this a million times. Sounds corny. I owe it all to Vancouver. My life wouldn't be the same without Vancouver hardcore. And I'm real excited to come back. So
yeah, I'm hoping that the Boise connection and invasion happens sooner than later when the borders can officially open up, and hopefully bands will just be going back and forth. So Charlie, appreciate you. And yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Sorry for talking your dick off.